talking a lot about the impact of disruption across industries, across technology, but no one is really talking about the impact of all this disruption on leadership. And so today, that's what we're going to focus on. And knowing that there is a very diverse group of people in the crowd, some of whom are occupying the C-suite of a Fortune 500 company, others are aspiring to that position, and still others are hell-bent on disrupting that position. We want to make this as practical as possible. So we have two folks who bring a really interesting perspective to this, and we want to focus on what are the lessons that they've drawn over their careers, which can be helpful for those of us or those who are on the way to the C-suite. And ideally, we want people to walk out with something which will be relevant regardless of where you are on that spectrum. So let's get started. Thank you both for joining. I want to start with something just a bit personal, just curious. Take me through something, a book, a piece of art, a movie, something that really influenced your leadership approach. Karen.
Oh boy, I'm going to sound like such an old fart when I tell you this, but my favorite leadership book is still John Wooden. And I know nothing about basketball. I'm English, so it's an alien sport for me, but just his lessons, I still draw upon them. You know, the star of the team is the team. To publicly praise and to privately criticize. There is just so many nuggets there. I made my kids read it. It's an awesome book. It's still an awesome book.
Excellent, excellent. Larry, how about you?
You know, same here. It's an old one, but General Colin Powell actually wrote a primer on leadership, which I found to be profoundly moving. You know, he ends it with the statement, leadership is more than the science of management says is possible. And fundamentally, he's saying as leaders, we have to figure out how to accomplish more than a textbook would indicate. And he also talks a lot about people. You know, the day the soldiers stop bringing you their problems, it's a failure of leadership. And for me, it's all about people.
Yeah, I know that book, and he said something that I've always found really interesting, which is that when you're in battle, you want to occupy in a zone and take action when you have more than 30% of the data, but less than 80%. And because if you wait past 80, you've missed your window. If you act before 30, it's too soon. So that's great. Thank you. So now, from the position that you're both in the C-suite, you're in a very interesting, role because you're charged with helping to give the company its vision, to see things that don't exist yet, to identify new potential opportunities, which is essential, and you're both very good at it. But that brings with it a certain challenge, which is how do you convince the rest of the organization to actually believe you when vision by definition can't be proven? How do you get them to rally behind you? Because I imagine a lot of the folks out here have that vision. They're starting out, they've got a great sense of what they want to achieve, and they believe the world hasn't yet seen it. If that's true, it's great, but they've got to grow beyond just their own individual impact. So how do you do that? How do you get a giant organization like Cisco to actually believe you're not crazy and to follow you?
I think they might still think I'm crazy, actually. I was really fortunate when I took this role a couple of years ago. You know, my personal story here was Chuck, our CEO, said, Karen, start with a clean sheet of paper. We've never really understood marketing in the past, and clean sheet. And that was both exhilarating and terrifying at the same time. And so for me, I had a very, very clear vision, that very bright light in terms of where we needed to go and what the role of marketing was at Cisco that was incredibly different from anything that Cisco had seen before. And it was all around personalized, real-time, much more of a consumer marketing environment. And I could, when I was talking to some of my colleagues on the C-suite, they'd go, like, what is she talking about? You know, like Net Promoter Score, customer lifetime value, personas. I think they thought I'd lost the plot a little bit, if I'm being really honest. But you know what, for me, it was so clear. I felt it in my head, my heart, and my gut. I absolutely knew it was the right thing to do. And so where we started was with my leadership team, and we really got to describe and play out, what is this vision? What does this bright light look like? What does it feel like? What will it mean for the company and our business? What will it feel for our teams? What it will feel for our individual employees? And we actually just built this common vision of where we wanted to go. And so we had to bring the rest of the team along. You're absolutely right, Pete. It's fine if you have the vision, but you're on your own. And so you have to be able to inspire the rest of the organization that that's where I want to go. I see it. I want to go there too. And so what we did is it's the true adage, communicate, communicate, communicate. We made it very clear about what that end state would look like and what it meant down to the individual. Along the way, we rewarded and recognized failure as well as success. So we really try to have a culture of learn to test and test to learn. So it was really like an agile DevOps environment for engineering. So really very different from what we've done before. And we had this mantra in the end, which was, there's no plan B. And we needed it at times because sometimes we really screwed up and sometimes things didn't go well. And it's been a tough journey. I won't kid you on that. But we're as energized and motivated, and sometimes when we look back and see how far we've come, we're feeling great. We're a little tired. We need to energize for the next phase of the journey, but you have to bring your team along with you. But for us, it was there's no plan B.
So on that, I'm just going to drill down on that a bit. When you say there's no plan B, I totally get that if you're an entrepreneur in your garage, okay? You're Cisco. So there probably was a plan B. But what I'm wondering is, for the employees, for your team members, how do you get them to believe that they truly have skin in this game, to believe there is no plan B, to approach it like an entrepreneur?
So we had to be able to describe this future bright light about what it meant. And so we changed our operating model. We completely turned how marketing was done upside down. We completely changed our brand strategy, our content strategy, our digital strategy. We completely changed our talent in terms of where we had talent, what type of skills we had. And what we thought is like, okay, can we kind of skin this down a little bit because this seems like an awful lot?
Yeah.
And what we found is that they were so interconnected that you really, you had to do it all. You couldn't bite it off in small chunks. And I think once people understood that, there was usually two reactions, Pete. There was like a holy shit moment in terms of like, oh, this is really big, to, all right, now I get it. But you really had to bring it back down to that personal touch and what it meant for every single one of our employees. And that takes a lot of time, energy, just passion for what you're doing. And I really feel that we've got them there.
Yeah, that's great. Excellent. Larry, how about you?
So first, a little perspective. I serve as the Chief Information Officer in one of the world's largest technology consulting organizations. So that provides a bit of a challenge when it comes to convincing people about where we're going in technology. Second, we've got to convince people where we're going about something they might not be totally familiar with. So that leaves us with the challenge that perhaps it isn't true that people always buy into a vision, but that they buy into a leader, and that they're willing to take a chance on someone if they trust that person, if they believe that person has the characteristics necessary to execute the vision, which they might not completely understand. So for me, it's really about how can I present myself and how can I be the kind of person that others would trust,
right,
the kind of person that others would take a leap of faith and say, even though I don't necessarily agree with that vision, or even if I don't understand parts of that vision, I'm going to follow this person. And it really hits home in your own organization. Assume you're really good at presenting it, you can get the executive committee along. Can you get your own organization really bought in, enthusiastic, jumping up and down to do whatever it takes to deliver this vision? Because at the end of the day, it's got to leave the slide deck and become real. And we do a number of things with our own organization that makes it real. You know, we do things like change the slide deck. Every slide shows what we're trying to accomplish. Every meeting we talk about, is that on mission? Remember, this is the mission. The mission has 3 pillars. You know, we changed the logo to really focus on the pillars. So we do a number of things so that meeting after meeting, interaction after interaction, we're reminding everyone this is what we're trying to do. And it sounds a bit hokey, but we distill it down to something that is digestible. You know, 25 pages of dense type, you know, just doesn't motivate anyone.
Yeah.
So really bringing it down to something that we can repeat so that it is understandable, repetitive, and it really makes people excited about where we're going.
Cool. So what have you done to help us to create trust? Just take us inside Larry's world. What are 3 things that you've done to create trust with your employees, but then also with the other senior leaders that you mentioned?
I'd say a few things. You know, your word's your bond. I remember in the technology organization, we did a number of soundings and found out that people just didn't believe we invested enough in their development. So I stood up. I didn't have the permission of the CFO, the CEO, and I said, no matter what, we're going to do something here. You're going to be able to do 40 hours of development at a minimum, and we're going to pay for it. It doesn't matter whether the economy has gone south, north, it really doesn't matter. Our words are bond. And we've done that. So for people, 40 hours is just a floor. Now they're doing a lot more than that, but they believe that even in the bad times, we had promised, and we wouldn't change our minds. With the executive suite, it's about being transparent. It's about demonstrating, look, I am on the team. I will not always agree, but I will execute once the team has agreed. You can count on me. I might be a little obnoxious at first, but once we've agreed, you won't find anyone better to execute it. And I won't stab you in the back. I feel very strongly about that. I witness stabbings in the back from time to time in various organizations, and fundamentally, I will not stab you in the back. I'd rather take the consequences rather than do that.
Got it. Got it. So word your bond, be transparent, and don't stab people in the back. Got it. Excellent. Karen, how about you? 3 things that you've done to build trust as a leader.
Very similar to what Larry's just said in terms of...
It'd be great if it was exactly the opposite. Stab the other person
sorry.
right between the eyes before they see you come. Yeah.
Pointy shoes on,
exactly.
I could do something with. But no, I think it is, first of all, you have to deliver. If you're going to say you're going to do something, you absolutely have to deliver on that. So that's actually, I see that more in terms of just building that credibility and that trust that you know your space,
right,
and you know what you're doing. But I also like what Larry said about avoiding passive-aggressive behavior. And so one thing that we talked a lot about at our executive leadership team level was we had to be able to learn how to constructively disagree. And so it's, if you have something to say and you don't agree, say it in the room. There's no conversations outside. There's no going in the back door into our CEO's office and, sort of saying, well, whisper, whisper, whisper. It's destructive. It's toxic. It's not the right culture or leadership behavior that we expect. And by the way, we actually hold ourselves accountable to each other on that. So each of us has the full permission of each other to kind of call it. It's like, call it bullshit. That's not what you actually meant. What you really meant to say was X.
Yeah.
And so it took us a little bit of a while because we went, ooh, oh, okay. But it's actually been a really positive, environment and culture of trust that we've built across the leadership team. We always have each other's back.
Yeah.
That's the other thing that we said too, is that, if something's going on in the business that they think, Karen, you should really know about that.
Yep.
And vice versa, you pay that forward to the rest of the team.
Great, thank you.
No, we might be giving the impression that we don't fight.
Yeah, no.
Fights are an absolutely necessary part of selling a vision of really leaning in and figuring out what's the right thing to do. I mean, if you haven't had a good fight all year, something's missing. The issue is trying to have these fights without trying to kill the other person, without trying to undermine them, without trying to cut their legs out from under them.
Yeah.
But having the fight on the merits, having the fight in a way, the way we say it in our organization, I want us to fight in this room in a way that allows us to go have a beer afterwards. So it'll get bitter, it'll get ugly, but it'll never get personal. And we can go drink afterwards when we need to. So it sounds great, but it's tough. It requires fights, but do the fighting with some transparency. You might even announce, we're about to fight.
Yeah.
Whatever it
Bring
takes,
it on.
right?
Yeah.
Whatever it takes.
It's on, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so a unique, I want to get your perspective and kind of bring it back to the theme of the day, which is there is so much disruption happening right now, and in many ways, the rules favor the disruptors. It's tough for a big company to stay ahead, to innovate, to actually fend off the disruptors, and actually plot a strategy that allows them to continuously grow. So I'm curious about your perspective, sitting where you are, and for all the folks in the audience, when you get big, when you are the one who could be disrupted, what do? How do you act like an entrepreneur at scale?
Yeah, that's a great question, Pete. And with Cisco, we're kind of in that spot, right? We're a company that's 30 years old. We've enjoyed tremendous growth and success in the networking space. By the way, we're incredibly bullish about the future ahead, in that with the Internet of Things and the digital economy, that the network is going to be even more important than it has been in the past. But we've hit middle age, right? And it's sort of, so you start to think, are you moving? Do you still have that killer instinct, that desire to really win that you maybe had in those earlier days? And so we've really examined ourselves on that. Everything from, looking forward, we have to disrupt ourselves. It's truly the innovator's dilemma, right? We have to disrupt ourselves to be relevant moving forward and have the courage to do that. And when you and I talked about this last night, that's hard to do, right? There's some great examples of companies who have done that, like Adobe and Microsoft, where they've changed their business model. They've changed a little bit of their culture, and I can see why you would need to do that. So at Cisco, we're very deeply proud of our culture and our heritage, and we want to preserve all the best of that. But we also know that there's some things that we need to change to really sort of be cutting edge and to be innovating. The thing that actually many of you may not know is that Cisco is known pretty well for making acquisitions, and we have an amazing engineering team, and we spend about $7 billion in R&D. But we also have a $2 billion investment fund. And so we're in the heart of Silicon Valley. So we are funding innovation inside and outside the company. We're also a great company to partner with. So we're looking everywhere. We're looking at bringing new talent in from outside the company. We're heavily investing in innovation in our current engineering teams. So we have these great competitions and innovation challenges and hackathons, and so it's something that's really a focus for us, because we get what you're saying. I completely agree with what you're saying. We have got to think really in a disruptive way for the next 5 years of our industry.
Yeah. And it really is, I think, not just how do you identify those new innovators, but then how do you actually create scaled advantage, right? Because if you fight by the rules of the disruptors, it's like jumping into the water to fight the shark, right? You want to play a game that you're well positioned to.
You're absolutely right, and we want to play to our strengths.
Right.
And our strengths is scale. Our strengths is our brand, and it is our go-to-market capability. So we know that we have that, and it's just what the innovation that we want to do in terms of our business model and our portfolio. We want to feed that into that engine, because that's when you can really get that scale and get that leverage.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Larry.
Again, it's interesting for us in professional services. So there are many parts of our enterprise which are constantly being reinvented. If you think about what clients buy today in terms of analytics and mobile, and what they bought 10 years from now, 10 years ago, very, very different. So we actually spend our lives reinventing ourselves based on client needs. We have a couple of things in our favor. Our clients actually tell us what they want. You hear it 5 or 6 times from clients, you know this is something you have to invest in.
Right.
So we're fortunate in the sense that we have this direct pipeline to client needs that allows us to figure out exactly what we've got to invest in. 2, we actually study this, right? We have the Deloitte Center for the Edge, which really thinks about change around the edge and how you bring that change into the core of the organization. And one of the things we talk about is not letting the core kill off the innovation at the edge, giving the edge some flexibility while tying it back to the core so that the core will eventually get the benefit of what we're doing at the edge. So how to run a multimodal organization is really important to us. There's some things that need to run a little bit more slowly and perhaps a little bit more safely. There are others that need to run fast, and at some point they need to influence each other, so we spend a lot of time really influencing it. And third, it's all about people. You know, we really empower people to be entrepreneurial. We really empower our people to go out there and solve client problems, to figure out what's new, what's different, and figure out how to bring it back. You know, we give them funds in some cases to take a new invention and make it happen. In many cases, we fail. We believe we've got to fail fast and move on. But this is something we're systematically working on, and it's driven for us by client need.
Got it. Okay, we got about 2 minutes left, so I'm going to pick up on the theme of transparency and failure, which you just brought up, to use that to embarrass both of you. Tell us your biggest failure as a leader and the lesson that you learned from it that you can share with everybody out there.
Boy, okay, so I think my biggest failure as a leader is I didn't ask for help when I should have done. And that it wasn't because I thought I knew better and was being arrogant, it was because I thought that's what they were asking me to do. They'd made me a manager and a leader, and I was supposed to take on these big responsibilities and decisions. So ask for help, because people will give it to you. You'll develop mentors and advocates for you. They'll become vested in your career. So do it soon, do it often.
Excellent. All right, something epic.
Epic.
I mean, like cataclysmic.
You know, I still recall getting some news about another department where that leader had been undermining me a bit, and you know, they were really trying to prove they should do whatever they want because, hey, Larry and his team couldn't possibly be that competent anyway. So I got some news about that department. It wasn't functioning really well, and I trumpeted it. I sent out an email. I said, this is an example of why they can't be trusted. You know, they can't really do what they're supposed to do anyway, and I really slammed them. And after doing some due diligence, it turned out that the main premise of my email really wasn't that true. Now, I could have made it seem true after I'd kind of shamed them in public. But I learned a lesson from it. You know, one is you really got to follow up on the details and find out whether something is true or not. But the second thing is I actually wrote a message to them publicly and privately saying, you know, on reflection, even if it was true, I shouldn't have said it. That it was not something, you know, my mother used to tell me all the time, if you don't have anything good to say, why don't you just whistle? Yeah. And I said in the email, I should have just whistled. And that's the thing I learned. You know, I got to pay attention to the details. But even if it's true, it doesn't mean I have to say it, even in an environment where people might take advantage of it.
Cool. Thank you. All right, and thank you both. We are out of time.
Oh,
so
wow.
appreciate it.
Thank you.